But Mark, let's end the podcast looking at a team that we love to talk about. We love to bolt up here. I know you love to bolt up. Usually when we give our predictions and everything, Mark's the guy that wants to give the Charger prediction.
I always have high hopes for the Chargers.
We're talking about the Chargers, though, because the rumor is with the Chargers that they're looking for a quarterback. They're going to look for a quarterback in round 2 of the NFL draft. And there's also another article that has Phillip Rivers kind of talking about the Chargers eventually drafting his replacement. And one of the things that he said he looks at, and he says, I think that Chargers GM, that team president, and Coach Anthony Lynn, these guys know my desire to keep going and hopefully play at a high level for a handful of more years. But at the same time, as in organization, you've got to prepare for down the road. If the right guy is there that they see fit, at some point they're going to have to make that decision, end quote. And the rumors say that the guy that the Chargers are looking at is Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph, the guy, of course, they could look at Luke Falk in the second. They could also look at Richmond's Kyle Lauletta. But Mason Rudolph looks like he could be the guy right there for the Chargers. I want to ask you, first off, what do you think about the Chargers looking for a quarterback in the second round for sure? Nothing's for sure, but
I think that they obviously have to. I mean, they got to be willing to take a quarterback in the first or second round. And the reason I say the first or second round is in case
Lamar Jackson, a Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah, or Lamar Jackson, or if amazingly enough, Josh Rosen falls. It's not going to happen.
I meant to say Josh Rosen.
Amazingly enough.
I said Kyle Rudolph. He's not going to be in this draft. He's going to be on my Minnesota Vikings still.
Well, he might switch and decide to play quarterback now and somehow end up in the draft.
Yeah.
You can write his name on the card.
No.
You can do it. But, they have to be willing to do it because if there's a guy that they like, they have to do their homework on these quarterbacks and put them in the order that they are willing to say. And if one of these guys is available in the first round that they want and there's not some of those other guys that they're like, no, we have to have this guy instead, then they got to be willing to do it. Now, I'm not saying that Mason Rudolph, they should take him at, 17 or 16 overall? I'm not saying that's what should happen because it's not what should happen. But they need to be willing to, in case they really like Lamar Jackson and Lamar Jackson somehow is made it past
still there,
the Dolphins, the Bills, the Cardinals, then they need to be willing to take that. Same thing with in the second round. They really have to be willing to because there's going to be some teams out there. We are about to enter a new era of quarterbacks, and we already entered it, but we're about to really be in it because you look at Tom Brady, Big Ben, Drew Brees, Matt Ryan's getting up there,
all getting older.
Yep, Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning. These are the big name quarterbacks of our recent years, and they're all about to be gone.
Did you say Drew Brees?
Yep.
Okay.
They're all about to be gone in the next 3 or 4 years, and they are all on teams that need to draft a quarterback.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting too is there's a lot of teams that I think in this draft need quarterbacks and could pass on them in the first round. Where, like I said earlier this podcast, the Bills could do so. Originally, I had Mason Rudolph going to the Bills in the second round because I thought that at 12, it's definitely a reach. And even at 22, I thought it was kind of a reach for them to go Mason Rudolph. But you just look at the second round, and the Chargers have the 17th overall pick. Their second rounder is actually the 16th pick, which would be the 48th overall. You look at the teams that are ahead of them that could need a quarterback. Cardinals are right above them. If they didn't go one in the first for some reason, they could look for one in the second. But the Cardinals are that interesting team, I will say, that if there's any quarterback needy team that I think could pass on a quarterback altogether, it could be the Cardinals.
Well, they got Sam Bradford
and Mike Glennon. They
got Sam Bradford.
They went ahead and signed 2 to where they have a starter and a backup to where let's not draft a guy this year unless we know for sure he is the guy for us. They can always kick that
they
stone down the
certainly
road.
will draft some quarterback, but it wouldn't be terribly surprising if it's a 4th round, 5th round quarterback.
Or I wouldn't be surprised if they say, hey, they get to the 5th round and they go, you know what? I'm not in love with any of these guys. We'll just sign an undrafted guy, see how it works out.
They could, yeah. I mean, you assume that they have these 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
They want to put somebody in that kind of emergency type of quarterback role or just mentoring type of role.
I mean, the Vikings were different because we had Teddy Bridgewater 2 years ago, but it's like when we signed Joel Stavi out of Wisconsin as the undrafted free agent just to be there, just to fill that spot. Of course, Cardinals in a little bit of a different situation because they don't have that Teddy Bridgewater. But so the Cardinals are right above them. The Redskins I'm going to throw out there because they're an interesting one to where they don't need a quarterback, but everyone's saying that later rounds they could go for a quarterback to just sit behind Alex Smith.
Yeah.
Question is, 2nd round, do they pull that trigger? The Dolphins, if the Dolphins don't take one in the 1st, do they take one in the 2nd to be like, hey, we're going to light a fire under Tannehill a little bit? Then you have the Broncos, who are 2 picks above that. They could definitely go with a quarterback in the 2nd. And then finally, it would be the Giants or Browns if for some reason they didn't. The Browns for sure, but the Giants, if they didn't go quarterback in the 1st, do they go one with the 2nd overall pick on day 2?
Yeah, and you got to think about some of these other teams too. There could very likely
A trade up?
Yeah, exactly. Be one of these teams that are later. Maybe it's like a Steelers or a Patriots or something like that who work their way up into the top of the 2nd. Maybe not the very end of the 1st, although it's certainly possible that somebody, could either trade up into the beginning of the 1st round or, Patriots are at the end of the 1st round. Maybe they could take their guy if they haven't already. There's some of these things here where you can't just sit there and say at 16 in the 2nd round, we'll be able to get Mason Rudolph. Because I don't really think you will.
Well, do you think, here, I'll ask this. Do you think the Chargers, because the rumor is Mason Rudolph's the guy. However, do you think, A, that Rudolph is the guy, or that the Chargers could sit there and go, you know what? We're just going to let it play out like it does. And whether a Luke Falk, a Mason Rudolph, or a Kyle Ouellette are there, we're just going to take whichever one's available at 2.
Well, it very easily could be a little bit of a smokescreen of like, yeah, Mason Rudolph is great, but we really like Luke Falk. That's the guy we really like, but we want people to think we like this one, so that way they'll go, if they want him, they'll go and get him.
They'll be
and
like,
then our guy is
they're like,
still
oh,
there.
shoot, they're interested too. We got to get him.
Yeah, it could easily just be a smokescreen for sure. Smokescreen for the 2nd round. I mean, whatever. But it's totally possible. It wouldn't surprise me in that case if it's kind of just they really like somebody else. But I'm sure that, they're going to do their homework on all these guys and see which ones are good options for them. I actually think Mason Rudolph is a great option for them. I think of the teams that he could translate well into with what his skill set is now and then build off of it. His kind of criticism is that air raid offense stigma.
Yeah.
But I think that's okay to go to the Chargers.
Well, and he's a guy, Mason Rudolph, and the reason why people are saying it could be him is if you look at the prospects that have met with the Chargers, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen, Mason Rudolph. So to me, that says, hey, we're doing our due diligence. We're going to meet with all the top 5 guys because we could possibly trade up if we want to, or if one of them falls.
Just like the Chiefs did last year.
Exactly. Or if one of them falls at 17, I want to know what they're doing so that I can possibly have an informed decision on whether or not to take them at 17. The interesting thing is that Mason Rudolph's the only one outside of that. They didn't meet with the Luke Falk. They didn't meet with a Kyle Ouellette. And it's not one of those things where you're going to meet with every single quarterback on the list. You've got to kind of spread it out because they also met with like an Equiminius St. Brown, a Vita Vea, a Malik Jackson from Texas who could be a third round talent in the draft. I find it interesting, though, that Mason Rudolph is the only other quarterback because to me it says, all right, we'll make a decision if one of the top 5 guys are us, but if not, Mason Rudolph could be our guy in round 2.
Yeah, and I think part of it, too, is that, you don't have a meeting with a 3rd, 4th round quarterback. You don't do it. It's just, what's the point? That's a project type of guy. You'll work with him.
Yeah.
What they're saying, I think, in that case is they are sitting there saying, let's meet with all the potential first-round quarterbacks.
Because
and they
we
just
could
met
need a
with
quarterback.
they just met with all the potential first-round quarterbacks. As much as people don't want to see 6 quarterbacks go, Mason Rudolph very realistically could go in the first round. Is it going to happen? The odds are it won't, but it's definitely possible that it would happen.
Which, just to show the other side of it, and of course this is also, I think, a little bit of who their head coach is too, but on this NFL.com kind of tracker, the team that has the 10th overall pick, the Oakland Raiders, of course they don't need a quarterback. Guess how many of the top prospects are associated with the Raiders?
Oh, I'm sure all of them. Oh, no.
They've met with...
He hasn't been meeting with everybody.
The ones that they have listed here, Terrell Crosby, offensive tackle, Oregon, who I've got as a 2nd, 3rd round guy. Malik Jefferson, linebacker from Texas. Vita Vea, Washington.
Interesting. I'm surprised he's just not doing his homework.
Whereas, you've got the Broncos, of course, every quarterback under the sun.
Yeah.
Every quarterback under the sun is there, the same ones that we've been listing, as well as some wide receivers and some running backs. Here's a question that I think I'll backtrack to. Is the 2nd round the right spot for the Chargers? Or is it wise for them, or is it wise for the news to come out that the 2nd round is where we're going to go? Or if you were a Charger fan, would you be sitting there going, no, if you don't get one of the first round guys, we've got Phillip Rivers, take one in the 3rd and 4th.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't wait till the 3rd and the 4th because, yes, you have Phillip Rivers, but you're not going to have Phillip Rivers for very long, I think.
The 3rd round, you can still... People have found guys in the 3rd round. The 3rd round...
few people have found people in the 3rd round.
The 3rd round, I would say, if your guy is there or one of the guys that you've been looking at, the 3rd round
it depends
is a good
what level of quality you want.
Yeah.
I mean, just on average, 3rd round quarterbacks are not that successful in the NFL.
True. I mean, there's also I'm going to hate that I bring this up. There's also the Tom Brady where
of course.
You can hit the needle in the haystack.
One of the only
I know.
in the 6th round to be successful. I mean, unfortunately, that's just the reality. When you look at actual statistics and actual numbers, first round quarterbacks far and away are more I shouldn't say more likely to be successful, but more first-round quarterbacks are successful than any other round.
What I'm saying is there's no science to this. Just because the Chargers draft a quarterback in the 2nd round
if a quarterback
doesn't mean he's going to pan out.
If a quarterback is good and he's in a good situation and there's good coaches and he doesn't get injured, then he'll be good. That's just, I mean, like you said, there is no science. It's just if the right things fall into place, it'll work out.
It's also a little bit of the attitude, too. Like Ryan Leaf at the time, I know he's completely different than he was back then, but he wasn't the right headspace to be successful in the NFL.
To gamble, though, and just say that, we'll get a guy in the 4th. That's okay when your quarterback's 29 years old. It's less okay when your quarterback is in his mid to late 30s.
Let's say not the 4th. Let's say the 3rd. Let's just say, should Charger fans be sitting there going, and if you don't get that guy in the 1st or trade up for that guy, don't do it in the 2nd. Do it in the 3rd.
The hard thing is they're not going to get a guy in the 1st. We know that for sure.
Unless they trade up.
Yeah, unless they trade up, which they definitely could. They're not going to get the guy in the 1st.
Which means they'll probably have to give up their 2nd and maybe their 3rd.
Yeah. To do it in the 2nd round, I think it depends on what the teams are that took quarterbacks. Because if everybody gets if 6 quarterbacks go in the 1st round, then you sit there and go, well, no one's probably going to go in the 2nd round as a quarterback. So, yeah, we can wait till the 3rd. But if there's going to be guys like Mason Rudolph or something there available in the 2nd, I think you got to go do it. And it really just comes down to the players that are available. Because if you're waiting and you're going to let a guy like Rudolph or a guy like Luke Folk, who maybe could squeeze into the 2nd, then you're waiting for that 3rd crop level of talent, you're in a really bad spot.
Here's the thing
then you might as well just not draft a quarterback.
Here's the thing I think that'll play into it too. And with my Chargers 7-round mock draft, I, spoiler alert, did not have them go with one of these guys, which maybe they should have picked up one of them throughout the draft. But I did not have them pick up a single offensive lineman in the draft. And I know that some people have said, oh, well, they don't really need to, but really they should look at the tackle position at some point. That's one thing that I think will play into this is how I think it'll play out is what defensive position will you value in the first? Will it be a Derwin James? Will it be a defensive tackle like maybe a Vita Vea if he falls, a Daron Payne, a Mo Hurst? Or will it be a linebacker, a Rashaan Evans that falls, really he would be the only one, maybe a Leighton Vander Esch, but really the inside linebacker guy would be the Rashaan Evans. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it becomes, what do we how highly do we value the quarterback? I think that, and I know this goes against my mock draft, it's just kind of how things fell out with different ones. I think that offensive tackle should be prioritized in the second or the third. Yet again, depending how things fall also will change that. To me, I don't think the Chargers have to necessarily prioritize quarterback in the second round. And the reason why I say that is because Phillip Rivers, like he said from the quote earlier that I mentioned, of course, quarterbacks can say whatever they want.
Yeah.
Teams have their own thought processes, and Phillip Rivers knows this. How much also is this Phillip Rivers threatening to retire because of the move to L.A.? Because remember, there was that whole thing, but is the organization like, hey, you know what? Just in case. I don't think so. Well, that just popped into my mind.
I don't think there's any just in case he retires because we moved to L.A. He's 36 years old. Mm-hmm. It's just in case he retires because his career's over.
True. Also, he's like you said, I want to play for a couple years. Mm-hmm. Do you gamble it and say, let's get that quarterback next year? Let's draft that guy next year.
It all depends on the way the board works out. I mean, if Mason Rudolph is their guy, if they're kind of like, yeah, all right, then you pass.
Because, again, I hate to use him as the example because he's at the top, but Tom Brady, LeBron James in the NBA, prime examples of guys nowadays doing so much more. And I don't know exactly what Phillip Rivers is doing. I don't talk to him every day. But guys have so much knowledge and so much available to them now to keep their bodies fresh. Like, look at how many people thought that Tom Brady would be playing as old as he is.
Tom Brady.
He was the only one. He said he's going to play another 10 years. He's going to play till he's 50. But because of that, I think that the Chargers could, if they wanted to, hey, you know what, we're going to prioritize this need first.
Yeah.
If I get a quarterback later, that's great. But if not, we'll just focus on getting that guy next year.
I mean, Phillip Rivers, he's a family man, so it's not like he's going out doing anything stupid. He's not going out and, getting drunk all the time, going and partying or anything like that, doing anything reckless.
He's not Gronk.
He's got, 7 kids?
I think so.
He's a little busy, I think, when he gets home.
With that bolo tie.
Yeah, seriously. He's 36 years old, so... people talk about the magical cliff. I'm not necessarily, going to harp on that side, but there is the potential of, he completed more passes last year.
8 children.
Threw less touchdowns, but less interceptions as well. He had more yards last year, so there's no sign that he has slowed down, but potentially this could be the year. And if I'm the GM, if I'm the
injury
owner,
can happen at any time.
Yeah. If I'm a head coach, I'm going to sit there and say, I love Phillip Rivers. We are not kicking him out the door, but I want to be prepared in case he does leave or he does get hurt. At this point, you just have to do your kind of insurance policy.
Before we end the segment, I want to ask you this. Prediction time.
Yep.
Second round pick rolls around for the Chargers. What will the pick be? Either you can say what quarterback it'll be because they didn't go with a quarterback in the first round, or you can say, no, we did this in the first round, so this is why it's not a quarterback.
I don't think it'll be a quarterback in the second round because I think there's a better chance Mason Rudolph goes in the first round. Or at the very, very top of the second round.
So you don't think they take a Luke Falk or a Kyle Luletta in the second if Rudolph does go?
I don't think they'll have to. I think they'll be able to get one of those guys in the third. I don't think that those guys are really people who are going to pan out in the NFL. But I would say if the Chargers draft a quarterback who is going to be seen as the heir apparent, not some guy in the third, fourth, fifth round, it's going to be because they traded up day one. I think that's more likely that they followed the Kansas City Chiefs plan and just say, hey, we traded up and got Baker Mayfield.
And then Phillip Rivers went to the New York Giants went to the NFC East.
I actually think if they did something like that, they would say, and I use Baker Mayfield as the example. One, because I think he potentially would be there in a spot they could trade up. But two, because he's a guy they can say, Baker, you sit. This is Phillip Rivers. This is his team. He's going to go out there and play. And if maybe they trade him next year or something like that, I don't know.
And then he played for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Well, then they'll win a Super Bowl. So maybe that'll work out pretty well then. But yeah, I think it's more likely they trade up in the first. Although I say more likely, I don't think it's really going to happen. But I think it's more likely than that they get Mason Rudolph in the second.
Yeah, I'm going to stay with my mock draft. I have him in the second round going with Mason Rudolph. I'm going to say that because I'll be honest, the way I see things falling out, I don't see a team like the Bills or anyone taking Mason Rudolph in the first. And I don't see quarterback teams like the Dolphins, the Broncos, the Cardinals. I don't see them taking a Mason Rudolph in the second round. I see them prioritizing other needs ahead of that. To me, the Broncos are the most interesting one because right now how I did my full mock draft was I took them by their word. And that's probably something that some people are like, you're stupid because they don't think Case Keenum is the guy, but I'm taking them by their word. That's why I didn't have them go with a quarterback.
Well, you had a good example in the city you live in last year of Mike Lennon's our guy, trade up for a quarterback.
And then Mitch started sooner rather than later. Same thing kind of with the Chiefs, but the Chiefs let the long play go out with that one. They didn't bench Alex Smith until after the playoffs and after they lost. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Want to thank Christian for being on this podcast, supporting us at patreon.com/mostvaluedpodcast. If you want to be like Christian, check out our Patreon page, link down below in the description. Also, if you want an MVP t-shirt, that link also down below in the description. Mostvaluedpodcast.com. That's where you can catch my full 7-round mock draft in article form, as well as everything for MVP each and every day. Last but not least, if you're on Apple Podcasts, you're on iTunes, go and give the Onside Kick a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to us. I want to thank you guys for listening on YouTube, well, watching on YouTube. I want to thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.